2 chocolate chip ice cream cones were melting in his hands, and he did not care. It was a cold autumn night in Kingston, Ontario in 1990, and a 19-year-old boy was walking across a dark university campus, building by building, looking for a girl who had just stood him up. Her name was Justine. She would become his first wife, the mother of his children, and the woman who knew Elon Musk before the world did. But on that night, he was nobody. Just a quiet student from South Africa, carrying 2 dripping cones and 1 enormous, stubborn hope. This is the story of Elon Musk's first great love, how he won her, how he lost her, and why perhaps no victory that came afterward ever completely filled the space she left behind. Kingston, Ontario, in 1990, was a quiet university town of gray limestone buildings and long, bitter winters. Elon Musk had arrived at Queen's University almost alone in the world. He was 19, newly landed from South Africa by way of a Canadian passport that his mother's birth had made possible. He had little money, very few friends, and a head full of ideas that most people around him found strange. He was the kind of young man who read physics books for pleasure, who could explain how a bank's computers worked, but struggled to make small talk at a party. And then, one day, he saw her. Justine Wilson was hard to miss. She was tall and striking, with long dark hair and a fierce ambition of her own. She had come from the small city of Peterborough, Ontario, and she wanted one thing from life: to become a novelist. She was not looking for a boyfriend. She was certainly not looking for a socially awkward physics student from Pretoria. Elon introduced himself outside her residence with a line that was not entirely true. He said they had already met at a party. She did not remember any party. Years later, she would admit she was fairly sure there had never been one. But he was polite, and he was persistent, and he invited her out for ice cream. She said yes. And then, when the evening came, she changed her mind. She penned a note to her door saying she had to study, and she disappeared into a quiet corner of the campus with her Spanish textbook. Most young men would have read that note and quietly given up. Elon Musk read it differently. He asked one of her friends a single question: "What kind of ice cream does she like?" Then he walked out into the dark, checking building after building, until he found her hunched over her homework. She looked up, and there he was, holding 2 chocolate chip cones that were already running down his fingers. We can only imagine what went through her mind in that moment. What we know is this: she did not send him away. Their courtship was unlike anything Justine had known. He did not take her dancing. He talked to her about electric cars, about solar power, about space, as if the future were a country he had already visited and was simply waiting for everyone else to arrive. She would later write that even then, as a student with barely $1 to his name, he spoke about the world as though it were his to repair. He sent her roses. He lent her books. He competed with her gently and constantly, the way he competed with everyone. And she, the aspiring novelist, found herself drawn to the sheer force of him, the certainty, the ambition, and the strange loneliness she could sense underneath it all. But life pulled at them early. Elon transferred to the University of Pennsylvania to chase bigger opportunities, and the romance stretched thin across the distance. They broke up, found each other again, and broke up again, the way young people do when their dreams are still larger than their patience. After graduation, their roads split completely. Justine went to Japan to teach English and fill her notebooks with stories. Elon went to California, where he and his brother Kimball founded a small internet company called Zip2. He slept on a futon in the office, showered at the local YMCA, and wrote code through the night, because they could not afford both an apartment and their dream. For years, the boy and the girl from Kingston lived entirely separate lives. And this is where most love stories quietly end. But some stories refuse to end on time. In 1999, Zip2 was sold for more than $300 million, and Elon Musk, at 27, suddenly had more money than his family had ever seen. The newspapers called him one of the bright young men of the new internet age. And one of the first things this newly wealthy young man did, with the whole world suddenly open before him, was pick up the phone and go looking for a girl he had once chased across a dark campus with ice cream melting in his hands. They found each other again as different people. He was rich now, restless, already pouring his new fortune into an online banking company that would soon become part of PayPal. She was a writer with a suitcase, a manuscript, and a stubborn heart. The old pull was still there, and this time it held. In January of the year 2000, Elon Musk and Justine Wilson were married. It should have been the simplest, happiest day of their lives. And yet, years later, Justine would write about one small moment from that wedding that she never forgot. On the dance floor, as the music played and the guests smiled around them, her new husband leaned in close and told her, "I am the alpha in this relationship." She would later say she brushed it aside in the moment. It sounded almost like a joke, a nervous young man's awkward way of being romantic. Only with time would she come to feel that something true had been spoken that night, quietly, between the notes of their first dance. And the warnings kept coming, dressed up as ordinary life. Their honeymoon had to wait because the company needed him. And when they finally boarded a plane for the long-delayed trip later that year, the company reached out and took even that. While Elon was in the air, far from the office and unreachable, the board of his own firm voted to remove him as chief executive. He landed, learned what had happened, and turned around almost immediately. The honeymoon ended in an airport. In some ways, perhaps, it never really began. Still, from the outside, their life only grew brighter. PayPal was sold to eBay in 2002, and Elon walked away with a fortune beyond anything the lonely boy from Pretoria could have dreamed. They moved to Los Angeles. There were houses, cars, invitations, everything a young couple could point to and call success. And then, in the spring of 2002, they received something that made all of it feel small. A son. They named him Nevada. Nevada Alexander Musk was born just as his father was founding the company that would become SpaceX. For 10 weeks, the Musk home held the ordinary miracles of a first child. The feedings, the small sounds in the night, the exhaustion that new parents wear like a badge of honor. And then, one afternoon, the baby was put down for a nap, and he stopped breathing. The doctors called it sudden infant death syndrome. By the time little Nevada reached the hospital, he had been without oxygen for too long. For 3 days, machines kept his small body alive, while his parents faced a decision no mother and father should ever have to face. And then they let him go. Justine held her son as he slipped away. What happened afterward, inside that marriage, is the part of the story that is almost never told. Justine grieved openly. She wept, she wrote, she spoke his name out loud. Elon went the other way. She would later say that he did not want to talk about Nevada at all. that he seemed to treat open grief as something dangerous, something that could pull a person under if they gave it room. Perhaps he was protecting himself the only way he knew how. Perhaps the boy who had learned early in South Africa to hide his wounds simply did what he had always done. He lowered his head, and he worked. Within months, the couple turned to fertility treatments, determined to fill the house with life again. Twins arrived in 2004, triplets in 2006, 5 sons in 4 years, a home full of noise, motion, and small shoes by the door. From the outside, it looked like healing, but between husband and wife there remained a silence with a name they no longer said out loud. And in the years that followed, that silence learned how to grow. By the middle of the decade, Elon Musk was running 2 of the most audacious companies in America at the same time. SpaceX was trying to do what only governments had ever done, and its rockets kept failing, one after another, over the Pacific. Tesla was trying to build an electric car in a world that kept insisting nobody wanted one. He worked with a fury that frightened even the people who admired him. He flew back and forth between Los Angeles and Silicon Valley, slept far too little, and carried on his shoulders thousands of jobs and 2 nearly impossible promises. Justine, meanwhile, was raising 5 boys in a large house that grew quieter around her, in the way houses do when one chair at the dinner table is almost always empty. She would later write, with painful honesty, that she felt she had disappeared into a role. The novelist from Peterborough had become a wealthy man's wife, and she confessed that she was never any good at being one. They argued, not about love at first, but about presence, about who he had become, about who she was still allowed to be. In one argument she never forgot, she told him, "I am your wife, not your employee." And he answered, in the flat, tired voice he used for problems he considered already solved, "If you were my employee, I would fire you." She wrote those words down years later, so the world would know they had been said. There were attempts to repair it. Counseling sessions, long conversations, one last effort to find the 2 students from Kingston somewhere inside the billionaire and the trophy wife. It was not enough. In 2008, after 16 years of chasing, winning, building, and drifting, the marriage came apart. And the divorce arrived in the very season when everything else in Elon Musk's world was also beginning to burn. Because 2008, as history remembers, was the year Elon Musk nearly lost everything at once. The 3rd Falcon 1 rocket failed that August, and SpaceX had money left for only one more attempt. Tesla was weeks from bankruptcy as the global economy collapsed around it. He poured in the last of his own fortune, and by his own account, he had to borrow money from friends just to cover his living expenses. The newspapers that had once called him a boy wonder now wrote about him the way people write about a man who is already finished. And in the middle of all of it, his first great love was ending in lawyers' offices. Then came September 28, 2008. The 4th Falcon 1 rose from its small island launch pad, climbed clean into the darkness, and reached orbit. The control room in Los Angeles erupted. Grown engineers wept. History quietly turned a page. The world remembers that rocket. Almost no one remembers that the man watching it climb had just lost the first thing he had ever chased. The divorce that followed was public and painful, argued through court filings and magazine pages. 2 people who had once shared melting ice cream on a student desk, now speaking to each other mostly through attorneys. Within 2 years, he would marry again. She would slowly rebuild a life and a voice of her own. But something in the arithmetic of his life had been settled that year, and it deserves to be said plainly. He saved SpaceX. He saved Tesla. He saved the future he had promised the world. The one thing from that terrible year he did not save was the marriage. He had learned at 19 how to win her. Nothing in his life had ever taught him how to keep her. Years later, Justine wrote about their story without bitterness and with a tenderness that surprises people who expect only wreckage. She acknowledged the love, the ambition, the boy who showed up holding 2 dripping cones because a note pinned to a door meant nothing to him. And Elon, for all his public battles since, has rarely spoken about her at all, which, those who know him might say, is its own quiet kind of confession. The world looks at Elon Musk and sees conquest, companies captured, markets bent to his will, rockets landing upright on ships in the middle of the sea. But the first thing he ever pursued with that famous, frightening relentlessness was not a company, and it was not a rocket. It was a dark-haired girl in a study lounge who had told him no. And hiding inside this story is the one lesson his admirers least want to hear. The qualities that let a man win the future, the refusal to quit, the deafness to the word no, the endless working hours, are not always the qualities that let him keep what he wins. He reached orbit in the same year his first love reached its end. He learned how to win her. He never learned how to keep her. If tonight's story showed you a side of this man the headlines never will, stay close to this channel, subscribe, and join us for the next Untold chapter, because behind every empire there is a quiet room where the real story happened. And here, one evening at a time, we are opening those doors.